How to Burn Your Weakness and Forge Inner Steel, Nietzsche's Hidden Trial of Strength. We begin at the edge where all real transformation starts not with answers, but with a question that gnaws at your soul. What kind of person do you want to become when everything is stripped away? Strip away your name, your possessions, your followers, your comfort, your validation, even your beliefs. What remains? Most people will never ask this. They spend their lives building around their weakness instead of through it, reinforcing soft spots with distraction, applause, and illusion. But Nietzsche's challenge is different. He doesn't ask you to become better by comparison. He demands you become terrifying by confrontation with your fears, your lies, and your false self. When he said, "Become who you are," it wasn't a motivational quote, it was a death sentence for the you that was manufactured by society. It meant you would have to dismantle every inherited value, every borrowed truth, every comforting delusion, and stand naked in front of your own raw will. Are you willing to lose the version of yourself that everyone else has learned to tolerate so you can become the one they will never forget, even if they fear you for it? Because the path to an iron mind is not paved with confidence, it is paved with ruins. The ruins of who you used to be. The ruins of cowardice, of needing permission, of being liked. And to rebuild yourself from those ruins, you must first master the art of philosophical destruction. Nietzsche called this the revaluation of all values. A violent internal revolution where you, and you alone, become the sovereign judge of what is worth in your life. The weak mind seeks approval and certainty. The iron mind creates meaning from nothing. No script, no applause, just pure self-authorship.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
This is not an easy path. You will be misunderstood. You will be abandoned. And worst of all, you will sometimes doubt your own sanity. Nietzsche himself suffered intense isolation and mental collapse. But rather than retreat into comfort, he walked deeper into the abyss. Because he understood something most never will. Strength is not the absence of pain, it is the absorption of it. An iron mind isn't one that avoids suffering. It is one that suffers consciously, intentionally, with open eyes and clenched teeth. It is the mind that says, "This will not break me. This will build me." You take your heartbreak, your betrayals, your rejections, and you eat them. You chew them into muscle, into silence, into will. Nietzsche writes, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." That chaos? That's your raw material. Your weakness isn't the enemy. Your refusal to face it is. The iron mind does not fear chaos, it seduces it, wrestles with it, conquers it. It is forged in nights without sleep, in decisions made without applause, in standing alone in your convictions, even when the entire room looks at you like you're insane. And that's the point. The further you go down this path, the less relatable you become. And the less relatable you become, the more dangerous you are, because you no longer move based on trends, validation, or fear. You move from will. But how do you begin to develop such will? You start by killing the idea that you need to be rescued. Nietzsche's philosophy hinges on one central concept: self-overcoming, not healing, not coping, not surviving, but overcoming. Going beyond the self you were yesterday again and again until you don't recognize the man you used to be. This is where most people stop, because overcoming is not romantic. It is brutal. It is not self-love. It is self-murder. It is putting your old habits, your excuses, your dependencies to death, and watching them rot in front of you while you build in their place something unspeakably strong. And let me tell you, that strength, it's quiet. It's not flashy. It doesn't need to post its progress. It just is. It radiates. People feel it when you enter the room. You don't need to say a word. Your presence disturbs them. Why? Because it confronts them with the truth of their own unbuilt mind. And nothing haunts a man more than another man who has done the work he himself avoided. So I'll ask you this, what have you been avoiding that you know would change your life if you faced it directly? What habit, what conversation, what decision have you delayed because it terrifies you? That's your test. That's your trial. And Nietzsche would say, that's your altar. Offer your cowardice to it. Sacrifice your lesser self. And walk forward anyway. Because the iron mind is not built in theory. It is built in motion in the doing of what is hardest again and again, without needing a reason beyond your own will to do it. And this is where the world begins to shift around you. Because when you stop waiting to be understood, when you stop living for comfort, when you stop needing to explain your path to people who have never left the village, you begin to radiate power. Real power. Not dominance, not control, but presence. You become the kind of person whose silence speaks louder than another's shouting, whose calm unnerves those who depend on noise, whose discipline is not about control, but about devotion to a higher version of yourself that demands everything from you. And if you've made it this far, you already know this isn't about ego. This isn't about being better than others. It's about becoming immune to being compared at all. You don't build an iron mind to impress. You build it so that you never again bow to fear, to fatigue, to failure, to loneliness. You build it so that your existence becomes a defiance to mediocrity, so that your footsteps leave cracks in the earth. And when others see you, they don't just see a person, they feel a force. They don't know what it is, they can't name it, but they feel it. That is the haunted presence of the iron mind. The man who has walked through fire and didn't come out the same. The man who carries silence like a sword. The man who, even when alone, even when dying, still lives with such clarity that he disturbs the sleep of the world. And that man could be you. The discipline of fire, Nietzsche's secret ritual to unleash the unbreakable self. To burn your weakness and forge inner steel is not simply a metaphor. It is the most literal, most excruciating ritual you will undergo. Nietzsche never wanted you to improve yourself like patching holes in a leaky boat. He wanted you to set fire to the whole ship and swim in the open ocean of truth, terror, and transformation. Because until you're willing to lose everything, including the version of yourself that plays well with others, you cannot become anything powerful. You can only remain pleasant. And pleasantness is not a virtue in Nietzsche's world. It's a mask, a trap, an addiction to approval that softens the will and destroys the capacity to act. So what do you do instead? You begin the hidden trial of strength. You suffer deliberately, not for the sake of masochism, but for the purification of identity. You train your mind the way warriors train their bodies, not for comfort, but for war. Because life is a war, not of fists, but of values. And your enemies are within: your laziness, your hesitation, your self-doubt dressed up as realism. Burn it. Nietzsche's idea of the eternal return was not some quirky metaphysical theory. It was a weapon. He asked, if you had to live this exact life, with every joy and every failure, again and again, for all eternity, would you still choose it? If not, why are you living it now? That question isn't meant to be poetic. It's meant to scare you. It's meant to slap you awake. Because most people are sleepwalking through lives they'd never choose twice. They justify their misery with routines, their regrets with distractions, and their cowardice with convenience. But the iron mind doesn't tolerate excuses, especially from itself. It doesn't settle for a life that's good enough. It builds one that is worthy of being repeated for eternity. And that takes the kind of psychological violence that most people never dare inflict on themselves. It means waking up and looking at your day not as something to endure, but as something to conquer. Every choice becomes sacred, every moment an altar. You begin to treat your thoughts like weapons, your time like currency, your pain like fuel. And then something terrifying happens. You stop needing motivation. You stop needing external reasons to act. You simply act. You do what is needed, not what is easy. You become the man who does the thing no one else wants to do, not for glory, but because it's the only thing that makes sense. You go into the cave. You lift the weight. You have the hard conversation. You sit in the silence. You say no when everyone else says yes. You build habits like shields, not because you're disciplined, but because you are possessed by a higher vision. And people around you begin to notice, but they can't name what they're seeing. You no longer complain. You no longer explain. You move like someone who's already seen the end of the world and decided to live well anyway. That's the man Nietzsche wanted to awaken in you, the one who haunts others by how deeply he knows himself. But to reach this point, you must ask the questions most are afraid to face. What lies are you still telling yourself? What habits do you protect even though they are killing your potential? What relationships are you keeping because you're afraid to face the silence that will come if you walk away? These questions are not philosophical luxuries. They are survival tactics for the soul. Because a man who refuses to confront these things will eventually rot from within. His outer life may look intact: job, family, respect, but his inner world is a crumbling cathedral. He bows to everyone but himself. And Nietzsche would call that the greatest sin, to deny the will to power, the will to create, to transform, to ascend. Instead of becoming a mountain, he became a mirror reflecting others but never becoming himself. And here's the raw truth. No one is coming to save you from that fate. No philosopher, no teacher, not even Nietzsche. You must walk into the fire alone. And in that fire, you will face everything you've tried to avoid: your fear of failure, your hunger for praise, your thirst for comfort, your addiction to fitting in. You will face it all. And if you're brave enough not to run, something wild will happen. You will stop fearing death. Not because you're reckless, but because you've already died to the parts of yourself that were never real. And when a man has died before he dies, he becomes impossible to manipulate. He becomes unpredictable. He becomes free. And freedom, in Nietzsche's view, is not the freedom to do what you want. It's the freedom to become what you must. It is the refusal to live one more day in a skin that doesn't fit. And that kind of freedom will cost you. You may lose people. You may lose comfort. You may even lose your sense of belonging. But you will gain something that no one can take from you: your own mind, made of iron, tempered by suffering, sharpened by silence, and haunted by truth. And once you have that, the world bends around you. Not because you control it, but because you no longer need it to affirm you. Let's slow down now, because this next part is where most break. Nietzsche said, "He who cannot command himself must obey." Ask yourself right now, honestly, do you command yourself? Or are you a servant of mood, of impulse, of weakness disguised as kindness, of laziness wrapped in self-care? The iron mind is not built in comfort. It is built in command, and command starts in the moment when your feelings say no, but your will says go. Every time you override the soft voice in your head that says later, you hammer another plate into your armor. Every time you choose discipline over dopamine, every time you suffer in silence rather than beg for validation, you become more real, more solid, more dangerous. And danger, not cruelty, is what makes a man worth noticing. Because people may not like you, they may fear you, but they will respect you. Why? Because you've done what they haven't. You faced the mirror and didn't look away. And in this age of surface, of speed, of empty stimulation, being a man of depth is an act of war. It is a threat to everything shallow. Your silence will be louder than another's shout. Your solitude will unsettle those who can't go 5 minutes without distraction. And your discipline will make people question the entire architecture of their own lives. But here's the paradox: the more iron your mind becomes, the more tender your soul becomes, not weaker, but deeper. Because now your compassion is not a mask. It's a choice. Your boundaries are not fear. They are sovereignty. You no longer love to fill a hole. You love because your cup is full. You are no longer chasing, you are creating. That is the kind of man Nietzsche wanted to awaken. Not just a rebel, but a ruler not of others, but of self. And now, I ask you this: if your entire life was watched by the younger version of you, would he be proud? Would he see a man of fire or a man of ash? Would he feel hope or horror? Because one day the only thing you'll have left is your own reflection. And the question won't be, what did I achieve? It will be, did I become someone worth becoming? And if that answer burns, good. The fire has begun. Beyond the abyss, becoming the force that reshapes the world. There comes a moment in every person's life, if they dare to look deeply enough, where they no longer ask, what do I want from the world? But instead, what does the world require of me? This question is not born from submission. It's born from sovereignty. Nietzsche saw this moment not as surrender, but as the final phase of self-overcoming. You are no longer driven by reward, pleasure, or escape. You are driven by vision. Not fantasy, not illusion, but a vision so alive it burns through every lie, every excuse, every drop of self-pity that ever lived inside you. And now, you are ready not to perform, but to embody. Not to inspire others, but to disturb them into awakening. You walk differently now, not because you're pretending to be strong, but because you have faced the abyss, and unlike the others, you didn't flinch. Nietzsche said, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." This is the paradox you now live in. The deeper you become, the more shallow others will assume you are. Because people can only see from where they stand. They will say you are cold because you are precise. They will say you are arrogant because you are clear. They will call you obsessive because you do not scatter your energy like confetti. But deep down, something else will happen. They will feel the hum of your presence like a frequency they cannot tune into. You won't even need to speak. Your stillness will expose their restlessness. Your direction will mock their drift. And this right here is the beginning of haunting. Not ghosts, not fear, but impact the kind that echoes in another person's soul without you ever needing to raise your voice. You become a mirror, and when weak men look into that mirror, they either run or they awaken. But haunting others isn't the goal. Haunting yourself is. Nietzsche's ultimate challenge was never aimed outward, it was always inward. Can you become the kind of man that you yourself admire? Not in fantasy. In reality, when no one is watching, when no one will clap, when no one will even understand what you're doing. Can you be proud of how you suffer, of how you train, of how you carry the silence without needing applause? Most people are haunted by their regrets. You must become haunted by your own potential, not in guilt but in reverence. Because you know what you could be. You've tasted it. And anything less than that becomes a betrayal not of society, but of your own soul. Now ask yourself right now as honestly as possible, what is the one truth I've been avoiding? The one conversation I need to have? The one decision I've delayed? The one action that, if I did it today, would break the chains that keep me small? Hold that in your mind. No justification. No, but what if? Just that one action. That is your portal. That is your test. And if you pass it not once, but daily, you begin to access a power that most people will never feel, the power of internal alignment. No more internal contradictions. No more self-sabotage. No more negotiating with your lower self. You walk the path you've carved, and you carve it with fire. But here's the part no one talks about. Once you build the iron mind, once you've endured, ascended, and survived, you must choose what to do with your strength. Because the strong are not meant to dominate. They are meant to direct. Nietzsche wasn't building tyrants. He was building creators, builders, warriors of spirit. You are not here to accumulate power for its own sake. You are here to shape reality by shaping yourself so clearly, so powerfully that your very existence creates a ripple in the fabric of life around you. You no longer follow meaning, you generate it. Your life becomes a myth, a pattern, a symbol that others will try to decipher but never duplicate. Because it isn't about copying a man like you. It's about becoming one. And this is the secret of all haunting greatness. It isn't flashy. It isn't always seen. But it is felt, deeply, quietly, unshakably. You become a fixed point in a chaotic world, or a calm in the storm. Not because you avoid chaos, but because you made it your training ground. Because you drank poison and built immunity. Because you smiled in suffering and found something sacred in the agony. That is the iron mind. It is not numb. It is not detached. It feels everything, but it does not flinch. It observes the entire collapse of the world and keeps moving forward with eyes like stone and a heart like lightning. And when you reach this place, when your soul is sharpened to such a terrifying edge, you will find something strange. You will begin to love, but not the way the world taught you. Not as dependence, not as transaction, not as relief. You will love like a storm loves the ocean, wildly, honestly, with nothing held back. You will love others because you are no longer a prisoner to their approval. And they will feel that. They will know that your love is not needed as fire. You don't need them to complete you. You simply choose to share your flame. And that kind of love it haunts, because it cannot be manipulated. It cannot be earned. It just is, given freely by the one who could take everything, but chooses to give instead. So now we come to the final question. Not, are you ready? Because the truth is you never will be. The real question is, are you willing? Willing to walk away from everything that made you soft. Willing to say no to the part of you that wants to be liked more than it wants to be free. Willing to carry your strength in silence, to suffer privately, to rise without recognition, and to haunt the world not through fear, but through undeniable clarity? Because clarity is the final form of power. When your mind is clear, your will is law. You don't need to control others. You don't need to prove yourself. You simply exist undeniably, unshakably, and immovably. That is Nietzsche's final lesson. That is the mind he wanted to forge in you. One that cannot be bent. One that laughs in the face of despair. One that walks into the abyss, not to escape it, but to build a throne inside it. And when you become that man, when the world senses the gravity of your presence, they will call you many things. Some will fear you. Some will envy you. Some will follow you. But none will forget you, because you have become what most never dare to be. A man with an iron mind, one that haunts even the brave.